Hello, every pony. It's time once again to don the reviewer hat as I take a look at the episode, The Ticketmaster. It starts off with Applejack and Twilight heading in from the apple orchards with full baskets. Applejack mentions a bet she made with Big Mac.
No, I bet Big Macintosh I could get all these golden delicious in the barn by lunchtime.
Applejack, darling, those aren't golden delicious. You sure you weren't out in the sun too long? Maybe you need a glass of apple juice. Twilight laments how hungry she is, just in time for Spike to find a gorgeous apple and chomp it down in one go. He belches up a letter from Celestia, which turns out to be an official invitation to the Grand Galloping Gala.
I've got a golden ticket. I've got a golden twinkle in my eye.
Applejack and Twilight are so excited they can hardly contain themselves. Applejack starts daydreaming about what she would gain from an apple stand at the gala.
With all that money, we could do a heap of fixing up around here. We could replace that saggy old road. And Big Macintosh could replace that saggy old plow. And Granny Smith could replace that saggy old hip.
Twilight's about to invite her when Rainbow crashes in and starts up her own daydream.
Everyone would be watching the sky, their eyes riveted on the Wonderbolts. But then, in would fly Rainbow Dash! I would draw their attention with my super speed strut. Then, I would mesmerize them with my fantastic Billy Flash. And for my grand finale, the Buccaneer Blaze! The ponies would go wild! The Wonderbolts would insist that my signature moves be incorporated into their routine, and then welcome me as their newest member.
The two decide to hoof wrestle over it, but Twilight quickly shuts them down, asking for reasons from them why each of them should get it. They both have good reasons, and she's hungry, so she just can't decide.
Oh my, those were all pretty good reasons, aren't they? Listen to that. I am starving. I don't know about you, but I can't make important decisions on an empty stomach. So I'll think about it over lunch and get back to you two, okay?
Okay.
I feel ya, hun. I can't think on an empty stomach either. In town, Twilight and Spike are bowled over by Pinky. Do you have a whole lot of golden bats in Equestria? I know there are yellow fruit bats, but yellow and gold aren't quite the same. Of course, Pinky wants to go to the gala too. Not for any kind of reason like furthering a career or anything like that, just because it's a party, and, this is Pinky.
Oh, the Grand Galloping Gala is the best place for me. Oh, the Grand Galloping Gala is the best place for me. 'Cause it's the most galloping, superly terrific gala ever in the whole galaxy. Whee!
Next to spot the tickets is Rarity, who is constantly designing dresses for the gala, but she herself has never gone.
I would stroll through the gala, and everyone would wonder, who is that mysterious man? They would never guess that I was just a simple pony from little old Ponyville.
She has a Cinderella fantasy, that she'd cause such a stir at the gala that she'd immediately be betrothed to the prince. Oh, wait, prince? And he's not an alicorn, he's a unicorn, and he's Celestia's nephew?
Oh, now I'm confused.
This relationship was never explained, though Blue Blood has been seen again. There are theories floating around that he's descended from the unicorn tribe rulers from the time of Hearth Swarming, which I think is a rather solid theory. And he's Celestia's nephew because she was adopted into their family.
Unlikely, but okay.
I can go with that.
As Rarity expresses her disgust at the idea that Pinky was invited instead of her, a bunny comes out of nowhere, grabs the tickets from Spike, and brings them to Fluttershy. Understandably, the others are surprised that such a shy pony would want to go, but she doesn't actually want to go for the party. She wants to go for the garden and all the animals that live in it.
There's loons and toucans and bitterns, oh my! Hummingbirds that can really hum, and buzzards that can really buzz. White blue jays and red jays and green jays, pink jays and pink flamingos.
Rainbow and Applejack show up and spur every pony into an argument over who should get the ticket, overwhelming Twilight for a few moments. I love the momentary Brady Bunch reference here, as well as Pinky's line after the arguing stops.
And then I said, oatmeal, are you crazy? Oh.
Didn't you say you don't like Pinkie Pie this early on in the show?
Hey, I said I didn't like early seasons Pinkie Pie, but that doesn't mean she doesn't have her good moments.
Logical decision, logically arrived at.
Twilight regains control of the situation and declares that she and she alone will make the decision, once again stating she can't think with how hungry she is. She shoos them all off and heads to a restaurant to get some food.
I would love a daffodil and daisy sandwich.
I like the way they handled non-sugar foods in Equestria. They largely eat hay, but also tend to eat flowers alongside other veggies you'd expect of an herbivorous species. I also enjoy the fact that early on, Spike has to settle for pony food since no pony carries gems for him to enjoy. It doesn't take long for Twilight at least to start stocking gems, and while we do see him occasionally eat other things, his love of gems is a fun running gag throughout the rest of the show. As she's about to eat her sandwich, Savoir Faire asks if she's going to eat in the rain. Twilight isn't getting rained on though, and she looks up to see Rainbow sitting next to a sunny hole in the clouds.
Rainbow Dash, what are you doing?
What do you mean? I just saw the smartest, most generous pony about to get rained on, so I thought I'd kick a hole in the clouds to keep her dry so she could dine in peace. That's all.
Laying it on a little thick, aren't you? Twilight chastises Rainbow for trying to get extra points doing favors and demands she close up the cloud.
Ugh, fine.
That's better.
I have to admit, I enjoy Spike once the other ponies start trying to gain favor from Twilight. He recognizes just how ridiculous this entire situation is on both sides. Rarity kidnaps Twilight to the boutique for a rather painful-sounding makeover.
Rarity! Ow! This really is a biscuit. I mean, thank you, but it's too tight. There! Oh, you're simply darling.
She gets lost in her daydream and Twilight heads out the door, where Applejack immediately accosts her with a cart full of apple treats.
I got apple pie, apple fritters, apple tarts, apple dumplings, apple crisp, apple crumblers, and apple brown Betty. The dessert, not my Annie.
Back at the library, Fluttershy's playing Disney Princess by cleaning up with her animal friends as a favor for the ticket.
Come, my little friends, as we all sing a happy little working song. Merry little voices, clear and strong. Come and roll your sleeves up, so to speak, and pitch in. Cleaning crud up in the kitchen as we sing along.
Twilight tries to get Fluttershy to leave, but the moment she opens the door, Pinky pulls her outside with the most obvious attempt yet.
Twilight is my bestest friend, Whoopee. Whoopee.
Pinky.
She's the cutest, smartest, all-around best pony. Pony.
Pinky.
I bet if I throw a super duper fun party.
Pinky.
She'll give her extra ticket to the gala to me.
Which ends rather predictably when they both mention the ticket publicly.
The Grand Galloping Gala! Ever told you how much I love your mane? I'll wash your dishes. Would you like any help with your gardening? I have a cartload of extra carrots. I'll paint your car. What are we gonna do? We're gonna...
I love the Benny Hill parody they play here. It's always so much fun when some pony manages to sneak something like that into their show. Twilight teleports herself and Spike rather roughly back to the library, where the other 5 are waiting.
I can't decide. I just can't decide. It's important to all of you, and I just can't stand to disappoint any of you, and giving me gifts and doing me favors won't make any difference, because you're all my friends, and I want to make you all happy, and I can't. I just can't.
Applejack, Rarity, Fluttershy, and Pinkie Pie all apologize and tell Twilight they've changed their minds, with Rainbow following after a few withering glares.
You know, I haven't perfected my signature moves for the Wonderbolts anyway. I don't need that ticket either.
Twilight decides to return the tickets to Celestia, saying if all of her friends can't go, she doesn't want to go either. The girls all gather for a group hug, and seconds later, a letter comes back.
My faithful student Twilight, why didn't you just say so in the first place?
6 tickets to the Grand Galloping Gala!
Now we can all go.
They all decide to celebrate/apologize, and as they head out, one more ticket comes through for Spike, who's a little more excited than he'd like to admit.
How come I don't get a ticket to the gala? And one for you, Spike. I mean, gross! I have to go too?
This was an okay follow-up to the pilot. It established a season-long plotline that pops up every now and then, but otherwise it's rather unremarkable. More often than not, when thinking back on the beginning of the show, I kind of forget this episode even exists, so there's really not a whole lot to say about it other than meh. Though I am finding it interesting watching the evolution of magical auras as the show progresses. In the first two-parter, when Twilight levitated something, there were just vague sparkles in the air to show something was happening. Now in this episode, the object has a somewhat more defined aura, but while the aura around her horn is a somewhat transparent pink, the objects she levitates either have a gold aura or revert back to the vague sparkles again. I'm glad they eventually settled on a method for determining the colors of unicorn auras down the line, especially as we started seeing more than just Twilight and Rarity using their magic. I do have one final question for this episode. Why were the tickets floating over the ponies' heads at the end? Was Twilight doing that, or did Celestia put a little spell on them? That always bugged me even during my first viewing. The first time I watched this, it made me wonder if maybe all ponies could levitate things, unicorn or not. But really, if that's the biggest nitpick I have with an otherwise unremarkable episode, I'll call it alright. Well, we're off to a bit of a rocky start, but not so bad that it stopped people watching. Until next episode, I'm Fauna Joy, taking off the hat. Applejack mentions a poop. They largely eat hay, but also tend to eat flowers alongside other veggies you'd expect of that is a hard word. They largely eat hay, but also tend to eat flowers alongside other veggies you'd expect of Twilight tries to get Fluttershy to leave, but the moment she opens the door, Pinkie pulls her outside with the most obvious attempt yet, and I said that weird. The girls all gather for a group hug, and who's a little more Well, we're off to a bit of a rocky start, but not so bad that it had